Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Markets Podcast. And today I have with me from Everipedia, the VP of Biz Dev, David Liebowitz. And he's going to talk about, what is Everipedia, what are they working on? And to start off, we're just going to go ahead and go into his story and his journey through blockchain and how he got to this point with Everipedia. So David, if you would go ahead and take us in.
Thanks, Ty. I appreciate you having me on. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely.
How I got into Everipedia and how I got to my position is a very long, windy story, but I'll keep it short. I originally joined Everipedia in 2016 as a writer. I was the one creating the wikis. For people who don't know what Everipedia is, we're a next generation inclusive encyclopedia. So I like to think of us as, we get a lot of things that are up and coming in culture. So a lot of things that Wikipedia considers quote unquote not notable enough. We cover, so whether it's like musicians or artists or journalists or current events, or recently we've been focusing a lot on crypto projects, crypto people and whatnot. We have them all covered. And so I was really interested in that in Everipedia when I first saw it, because I was like, wait, you can have a wiki for anything. Like anything can be scholarly if you have the right citations, if you just word it in the right way. So that really intrigued me. And so I started, just writing on it for fun in 2016, writing entries and whatnot. And then I was in New Jersey at the time. And then they invited me to move out to LA in July of that year. Bought a one-way ticket, moved out in September. Was just grinding in LA with Everipedia. This is even before blockchain was a thought. I was just, writing wikis. We all were just grinding on just creating a better encyclopedia. And then around 2017, 2018, crypto started getting popular again. You started hearing about Ethereum and the promises that blockchain was going to bring to Web 3.0. And we're just like, wait, if we really want to be a next generation encyclopedia, it's only logical that we use blockchain and utilize censorship resistance and all that stuff. And so we got connected to the right people. We realized that the best blockchain for our platform was EOS, because there was no transaction fees. It was fast, quick. We were connected to the right people in that community. So we ended up raising $30 million from Galaxy Digital in 2018. And in that was in early 2018. In July of that year, we actually fully launched on the blockchain as a live product. Yeah, so how the IQ token works is it's people have like a stake in the system. And I'm kind of getting into like how Everipedia works.
That's fine. So, go ahead.
That's how it flows. And so how Everipedia works on the blockchain is, you have the IQ token, and in order for you to make an edit, you need to use the IQ token in order to make an edit. And so you submit IQ, whether you make a new page or edit an existing one, and then the community votes on it with their IQ tokens over a 12-hour period. And if the edit is approved, then you and the people that voted for it get newly minted IQ tokens. If it's rejected, then those tokens are locked for a period of time. And so around 2018, I was still an editor. Around this time, I started actually doing partnerships and just reaching out to different organizations and brands and people. And actually one of the interesting early partnerships I got was with this famous DJ named Excision. I got connected to his team, and he had this thing called Spotlight Artist of the Week. And how I said that Everipedia is the up and coming wiki and culture, like this was perfect. His Spotlight artists that he would feature on his Twitter, on his Instagram, were perfectly in that category. So we would make Everipedia pages for them. He would give a shout out, to the artist, give their SoundCloud, and share their Everipedia page so people, have more context in their story. And so I started doing, more partnership stuff like that. We had a partnership with Hacker Noon, where we would cover, do the same thing, but with Hacker Noon contributors. They have a lot of great people in the software and tech industry that write for them. They have a great community. Shout out David Smoke. We actually, for a while, we had a column on there covering all like our most exciting pages of that week too. So I was doing a lot of partnership stuff. And then in 2019, it gave me the responsibility of working with exchanges. So I had a lot of time just reaching out to different exchanges and whatnot. And now I'm the VP of Business Development. So I do exchanges, I do partnerships, I do media. So you'll see me on a lot of podcasts in the coming future. And I feel like as Everipedia grew, I grew along with it. I feel like I feel like a lot of people, when when they're in startups or when they're in business, a lot of people have the wrong mentality. It's like, oh, like what can I get from this? But you have to have the opposite mentality. It's more like, oh, what can I contribute to this? Because the rewards, you have to pay your dues, and the rewards will come in the future. But you have to prove yourself, and you have to build trust. And I think one of the number one things I've learned at Everipedia for it's been 4 years now, is it takes time to build trust. And that's super valuable. And people, I think that's like very underrated in this world of just like instant gratification, instant this, like I want everything quick, quick, quick. You have to like build trust over time. You get to know people over time. I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by such great people, such a intelligent team. Definitely people like way smarter than me. I learn something new every day from them. I swear, I swear. So that's and we all have the same mindset. We all first of all think like Everipedia and everything that we're doing at Everipedia is cool, not just with the encyclopedia, but about all the different DeFi stuff we're doing with PredIQt, which we'll get into later. We're just interested in building cool stuff, and we're all down to put in the work. We're all down to contribute, and we know like this is something bigger than ourselves, and it's not one person that makes it. It's all of us that make it. We're all just a piece in a bigger game.
Awesome. And you talked about trust, right? Isn't that what like this whole thing's about, right? Decentralization. This whole movement is about the fact that the current system that we have is it's all centralized. You can't trust it. It's not transparent, and so that to me that's like a perfect example or perfect topic to go into with Everipedia. So you mentioned also editing on Everipedia. And so I'll just summarize basically what you said. So Everipedia is essentially a decentralized Wikipedia.
Yes.
Right. To put it in like super layman's terms for like beginners. So if you take that idea, I'll ask this question later down the road where we'll talk about like, what Wikipedia and the centralization and some of the biases involved in there. But for now, we'll just talk about for edits on Everipedia, if I was to go in there and make a false claim about some information, first of all, I'd have to supply IQ tokens, like you said, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if I wanted to do that, I have to supply these IQ tokens, and so that makes me have to provide a contribution just to be able to put false information.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a deterrent, right? And then the second thing is, so my question actually is, so what are my benefits of providing true information with my IQ tokens? And I guess we'll kind of just expand on that.
I mean, the IQ token represents your stake in the system. So when they make edits, like I said earlier, they make edits, they get approved. Newly minted IQ tokens. Like so, good contributions are rewarded, and bad contributions are rejected and penalized.
So who are these bad contributions like analyzed by, and how do you determine that it is going to maintain correct information?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, the community, we have a pretty active community around the world.
Right.
The whole community votes on IQ tokens, and I like to think of Everipedia and all the pages on it as like living documents, and living documents that provide context. So, there's always going to, people change, stories change, new facts come to light. So something that could be, that was true, a few years ago, like there might be new information that has to be changed.
True.
And so, if let's say for I'll give you an example. If somebody like makes a bad, a bad faith edit and it gets approved, it can just be switched, like that. Like somebody can catch it and it changes. And and then it gets fixed. And I like to think of Everipedia, whether all kinds of wikis, whether it's Everipedia pages, Wikipedia pages, they're just there to provide context. They're not like the ultimate source of truth. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get confused with with what wikis are. People depend on them for truth, but that's really not the case. It's supposed to like give you like kind of like a starter for the story. And if you want to know the truth, you can, do your own research, whether that's, Googling online or going to the Everipedia citations, and then draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Unfortunately, when people use Wikipedia, they're not using it as a source for context.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I think people use it like as the literal source of factual information.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, so you ideally want to go do your own research and look at these references one by one to determine,
if people don't have like time to do their research and stuff, they just want something quick. They just want something like that gives them an idea or something like, okay, I get it. I can draw my own conclusions. This is what I think and blah, blah, blah.
Right. Here's a super summarized paragraph of what happened and let me run with it. So actually I want to ask you, like, how did the idea come about for Everipedia? So obviously, I mean, you have a lot of like decentralized solutions that came about for problems with centralized communities or centralized products. So how did the idea for Everipedia come about?
Everipedia was started in a dorm room at UCLA by a UCLA student, the co-founder Sam Kasvian, and also Theodore Forselius, who is from Sweden. High school dropout turned Minecraft server extraordinaire.
Nice.
He has a great story. Teddy's the man.
Right.
But yeah, Sam was editing Wikipedia, and he was at it for a bit, and he noticed, how hostile the main, admins were, how they weren't open for new information, and how difficult it was, and how much friction he faced when trying to edit Wikipedia, trying to add new pages. And so he thought of like, there must be a better way to do this. And I'll also give you some more context over here. So in the first 10 years of Wikipedia's history, there were two camps of editors. There was the inclusionists and the deletionists. The inclusionists believe everything should have a page. If it's a stub, it can be improved. The deletionists are like, no, we have to be strict. We have to have standards, blah, blah, blah. And around 2010, that's when the deletionists won out. And if you notice, around 2010, their number of editors, kind of plateaued.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, the number of pages plateaued. And, we know what happened since 2010, just the rise of influencers, YouTubers, internet celebrities and whatnot. They all became, in my opinion, very notable, but Wikipedia wouldn't consider them that. And so they missed out on all of that. And so that combined with, Sam and other Wikipedia editors' frustrations, kind of basically led to Everipedia being created. Actually, Paul Graham said in the founder of YC, he said early on in YC, like ideas that he would like to see created, like he said Wikipedia is ruled by deletionists. I would love to see something where, what someone to do to Wikipedia, what Wikipedia did to Encyclopedia Britannica. And so how Wikipedia did that to Encyclopedia Britannica is they utilized open source and the power of open source. And, editing, anybody can edit, free information. Well, Encyclopedia Britannica, you have to pay for this, there's subscriptions. But what we're trying to do at Everipedia is it's similar to Wikipedia, but, widen,
it's like taking it the next step. Like, okay, so from the original encyclopedias, then Wikipedia went open source. But the problem is, of course, it was too centralized. And of course, the editors were taken down to a select few editors that are obviously biased in how they're, editing the content. And then you guys took it another step and actually made it decentralized. It's almost like you have a logical progression of like information here.
We in a way, we democratize the editing process. So instead of like some, dictatorial admin deciding whether an edit should be improved or not, it's the community that decides. And, for the past 2 years, I consider Everipedia an experiment. It's gotten really well. We've gotten editors all over the world. We're growing. We have several million unique monthly users visiting our site. And, we're really excited for the future. We're in several different languages. Spanish community is growing very quickly. The Korean community is very exciting. Chinese community as well. And in the East too. We like to think of Wikipedia as the dominant encyclopedia, but in the East, it really isn't. There's several different types of online encyclopedias in South Korea. So we see that as a huge opportunity for us, especially how excited people in South Korea are for cryptocurrency.
It's interesting. I was in South Korea last year, and I had no idea that South Korea they're not using the type of apps that we're using. Now, I mean, Southeast Asia, similar. They use like their own little style of apps. Of course, they still use like Google Maps occasionally, but like in South Korea, they have like literally like stuff that I've never heard of, and it's only for South Korea. So in a way, I mean, I have no idea. I've never even tried to look up like what apps or what tools,
The
you know,
cow, the
yeah,
messaging app, yeah.
yeah. So like I never looked into like, what kind of, encyclopedias or, what kind of information resources Koreans would use. Do they primarily use your tool, or is it at least a high shared percentage?
Yeah, no, we're definitely growing. We're not the top yet, but we're definitely growing there. I believe the top wiki in South Korea is Namu Wiki, and Wikipedia, Korean Wikipedia might be third or fourth. I'm not sure, but the thing
Right.
about South Korea is that's really interesting is they have such like an internet gaming culture that
Hmm.
they kind of already had the mindset ready to accept cryptocurrency. No pun intended.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah, because what happened, well, I looked into this. What happened was in the late 90s, after the Asian financial crisis, the South Korean government was like looking for a way to get people like just back up on their feet. So they invested a lot, in fiber optic cables, like having fast internet connections, and they were really the first country to pioneer gaming as a sport. And so a lot of the best gamers are in South Korea, and South Korea has such a gaming culture. It's very comparable to how in America you see people playing basketball just in the local park. In South Korea, like people just go to the gaming cafes and go game, and so it's a huge different. And so they're much more used to just digital currency and even like non-fungible stuff like accessories, buying stuff for their avatars and whatnot. And so South Korea might be like one of the most ripe places for crypto in the world.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
yeah,
and you notice
awesome.
like on South Korea, crypto markets, they're even though they're not the largest country in Asia, but the people are definitely interested and they have a ton of volume on those exchanges.
Yeah, they definitely contribute a lot for being as small as they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, between them and I mean China does too, but it's
Yeah.
I mean China is so much more massive though.
Yeah. What's interesting about South Korea, it's like it's already a developed country and they have this interest. Usually in developed countries, it's not really the primary focus. It's usually you see cryptocurrency, a lot more interest, and people actually, I feel like people understand, the power of, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin more in developing countries because in those countries, that's where they face currency volatility, and they understand the value of, holding, an asset like Bitcoin.
True, and then they also enjoy using like stable coins.
Stablecoins.
There's a big push to do more remittances in all these countries. Hasn't really worked out just yet, but I'm sure they're gonna figure it out eventually. There's like micro economies of stable coins as well.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be really interesting. That's why I'm super excited about DeFi. I feel like what I thought Bitcoin was going to be, DeFi actually is. So
Yeah.
honestly, like Bitcoin, there was like, oh, this is gonna revolutionize finance, blah blah blah. And
Hmm.
Bitcoin, yes, it is revolutionary, but it's only revolutionary to an extent. Bitcoin can only do so much, which is fine. Like Bitcoin doesn't have to do
It has
everything.
its purpose.
It has its purpose. It's this digital store of value. It will eventually mature to be a just digital store of value. I don't think it's that yet because it's too volatile. Right now,
Hmm.
blockchain is considered an exotic asset. That's why it's so correlated with the S&P 500 at the moment. And that's how institutions and traditional finance looks at it. It's an exotic asset. In the future, like yeah, it will most likely be a store of value, but we're not there yet.
Yeah,
Um, but
exactly.
with but with decentralized finance, while Bitcoin is transferring value without central parties, decentralized finance is doing is doing banking without central traditional parties. So in a lot of these developing countries, they have trouble accessing the financial system. It's not like in the U.S. where you can just go to the bank, open up a credit card, get a loan. We really take that for granted here. They don't really have.
Yep.
Most of the world doesn't have access to that. So when you when now they have or get to have access to lending, to earn interest, that's how economies expand is through credit. And
Exactly. And then most people outside of the United States don't have access to a lot of those tools.
yeah, and same thing, even in the United States, a lot of people don't have access to credit,
That's true.
whether it's where they're located, they don't have a good credit score. There's a lot of factors that prevent them from having mobility economically. And I think decentralized finance, once it matures enough, once it becomes easier to use, once education's out there, I think it'd be a huge tool in empowering people. And I think that's what blockchain and why we're all in this is what this is all about. It's empowering people.
Yep.
When it comes to decentralization, for so long we've had these centralized entities that we've like kind of become accustomed to that kind of just in a way rule over us.
There wasn't really an option other than just accepting those centralized entities, but now that the blockchain has come along, there are opt-outs essentially.
Exactly, yeah, and that comes with certain responsibility. Like,
yes,
holding your keys is a big responsibility, and not everybody wants to do it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I've heard stories of people losing their keys. It's a nightmare.
Right. Well, let's talk about first of all, what is PredIQt? Am I saying that right?
Predict. Yes.
Predict. Okay, that sounds way better than PredIQt.
PredIQt.
Okay.
I actually got a PredIQt.
Okay, awesome. All right, what is predict? And by the way, for people who might be listening to the podcast, it's spelled PREDIQT. So
predict.
Yes, and so I understand it's like your second D app for Everipedia, but please explain, like, what is this?
It's our second app. It's a decentralized prediction market, so it's basically the Augur of EOS. I like to, I think it's definitely still true to our knowledge mission, as Everipedia is historical knowledge that's on the record. Predict is actually future knowledge, and people using, the knowledge they already have to try to, predict future events and try to, monetize their knowledge in that respect. So yeah,
and let's talk about that more, because that's kind of interesting. So how exactly does this model work? And I've looked at Augur before, and I haven't done a huge deep dive. But I guess essentially, from my understanding, I could be totally wrong on this, but you present something that could happen in the future, and you essentially let people vote on it. Like, for example, like the election. So you could say, okay, who's going to win the election, right? And it's a simple vote, but it's also helping to determine with unbiased results, or not unbiased results, but unbiased questions, what the I guess predictive market scenarios will be. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. So prediction markets are actually an educational tool using the wisdom of the crowd to try to anticipate future events. That's how they've been used. That's how PredIQt, like probably the biggest prediction market in the world, is run by a university, because they try to take the wisdom of the crowd to draw their own conclusions. So how Predict works, still uses the utility of the IQ token. Somebody can create a market. For example, I created a political market the other day. It was actually a little bit more specific. Will Donald Trump win the state of Pennsylvania? Yes or no? And so, I submitted IQ tokens for that. Those IQ tokens get burned, and then, the market's live. So people can buy yes shares or no shares. So they can buy, 0.6 yes shares, which is basically saying, yes, I believe there's a 60% chance that Trump will win Pennsylvania. And then, you put the order up, you have to wait till somebody thinks that, oh, I actually think it's no. And I think there's a 40%. So they buy a 0.4 no shares. And so, people place, buy shares. We actually just released a sell share feature. So, let's say you don't want to hold your yes share to the end. So, you can sell your shares like once you feel like, you want to just cash out, or you just don't want to be in the market anymore. You can feel like selling your shares. So the market goes on for how many months. And then, once the event ends and the market is resolved, let's say, Trump does win Pennsylvania. Then what we're working on right now is a decentralized IQ resolution system. So basically, there's a certain threshold of IQ tokens, let's say 10 million IQ, that people use their IQ to determine what actually happened in the event. So people basically say, yes, Trump did win Pennsylvania. Once it reaches 10 million IQ, then that's the resolution, and you get rewarded for being part of the resolution process, and that's how you do resolution in a decentralized manner. So there's
pretty cool.
Steps. Yeah, there's 3 steps to it that all use the IQ token, which I think is really novel. Creation, during, and after.
That's pretty cool. So, and you guys are obviously adding this to your already existing ecosystem. Now, I have a question. Mm-hmm. And you may not know the answer to this. I'm sure you do, though. But do you know why you decided to use the EOS blockchain over something like Ethereum, for example?
Yeah. So few reasons. We saw the EOS, the specs of the EOS blockchain early on.
Mm-hmm.
We thought it was really promising. But there are no transaction fees. Then I know people give Dan Larimer a lot of shit for like leading projects and whatnot, but
Right.
aren't projects meant to be decentralized? Like, why do they need a leader? So like,
no, they don't, and I think that's a good point.
Yeah, like I never understood that criticism. I just viewed people being jealous of Dan. Like
I wouldn't say that that's a valid criticism. If it's just because he's just going from product to product, that's fine. Isn't that what we want? Don't we want a decentralized community?
Yeah, like look at Steam. Like Steam has grown, and Steam and Hive now have grown so much. BitShares as well. Like he's built successful blockchains, and he's now built an all-purpose blockchain. That at the time, Ethereum had these problems, and they still do with these like transaction fees and scalability and whatnot. And so this was kind of an answer to that. And honestly, I don't think Everipedia could have existed on Ethereum because of the transaction fees. There was actually a wiki project on Ethereum called Lunar that actually folded because they couldn't get.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, exactly. They faced two problems. One, they had zero SEO, and two, like it was just too hard to edit. So
right.
We saw EOS being the best option for us. We got the most support from EOS. The EOS VCs were really excited about us. The community was really excited about us. So it just made sense to
can't argue against that. And then plus the other thing is, so you guys came up with this before 2017, correct?
Yeah. So we started Everipedia. Like Everipedia started being built in 2014 and like launched late 2014, early 2015.
Now imagine if you had been around on Ethereum during the CryptoKitties congestion.
It wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have. It was so frustrating. Blockchain is it's still so early.
Exactly.
We're still in like trying to tinker the engineering. We're not even at the UX mass adoption phase yet. It's only like certain people that want to take the time to learn how to and be patient enough to deal with the UX that comes with dealing with Scatter or MetaMask or Token Pocket or any other ways to interact with these blockchains.
Exactly. So we briefly spoke about a token that you guys or the founders of Everipedia are working on, and it's called Frax.
Yeah.
And so from my understanding, the token breaks down from 100% collateralization. And it goes from like a one-to-one tether collateral or similar to it, breaks down into phases, and eventually becomes an algorithmically backed token. Does that sound pretty accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly,
can you explain like some of these terms and everything for like beginners?
Yes, I'll try my best.
Okay.
So Frax is a separate project from our IQ ecosystem. IQ that has Everipedia, PredIQt. We also plan to release a bunch of DeFi products in the future, such as synthetic assets, leverage, interest. And
when you say synthetic assets, are you talking about like tokenized assets, essentially?
Representations of either cryptocurrency or oil. All that. So we plan to do that in the future with the IQ token, building the IQ ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And Frax is something separate. So that's led by Sam Kazemian. And actually, we have Stephen Moore, who it was the Fed nominee by Trump. He was involved in the Heritage Foundation. He's he's a very respected economist. He's actually the chief, one of the advisors, and working on Frax as well. And so with Frax, that's our algorithmic stablecoin. And I kind of view it like this: when DAI was created, it was created at first just like purely algorithmic. There was like nothing backing it. It had it used people putting up all these tokens as collateral, to create DAI. Whether it's Ethereum or other tokens and whatnot. But there was like no bridge from being a stablecoin to like going to DAI. So that just sounds funny. Going to DAI. So, with Frax, how the Frax team was thinking is like, okay, what's like a more gradual transition we can create to go from, a backed stablecoin to a fully algorithmic stablecoin? Because I kind of view like all this DeFi stuff and stablecoin stuff as financial alchemy. It's honestly like magic. It
is.
It really is like how we are just like creating value from value. It's pretty much magic. Like the more you're around it, I'm just honestly, the more you're in this space, the more you're just mind blown.
Well, it just now after some time, it just becomes like philosophy, right? You're like, it's just like all these
Yeah.
different ideas of how to do this stuff, and then if you look at it from like a simple perspective, then it becomes clear like what it is.
Yeah, that's the best way. Like once you can like explain it simply, like that's the that's when you understand it. So I'll try my best with Frax. So
Yeah.
Frax, how we're starting off is a one-to-one backed, like one Frax, Frax is backed by one tether, and that's how the system's going to start off. And we're going to include other stablecoins too, like BUSD, USDC. And over time, as the system, so that's the back collateral phase, like the fully back phase, and then we're gonna have a transition phase where it's somewhere in the middle. So as the system, grows and expands, there's gonna be less stablecoin backing it, and we're gonna have something called frac shares, which is like your share in the whole system. Which the frac shares actually like they aren't stable; they go up and down, and determined by the market price. So let's say Frax, the collateral, the system's growing, so collateral goes down to 90%. And then it will be 90% backed by, stablecoin, 10% backed by Frax shares. And then let's say the system contracts a little bit, you add more collateral, so it's 95% stablecoin, 5% Frax shares. And eventually over time, the idea is as, adoption for it grows, the less stablecoin needs to be backed. And early on, we actually plan to reward early Frax holders with Frax shares. So if you're an early adopter to Frax, you're actually just like receive Frax shares. It's very similar to how in traditional banking, a lot of private banks, before they go public, they'll sell their shares at a discount to people that have accounts in the bank. So let's say you have a CD in this bank, in your local bank, little did you know they have $1 billion in assets. And so they decided to go public, and they're like, hey, you can actually buy some shares, and then and you're like, oh, cool. But it's similar to that in a way, rewarding early adopters. And so over time, the collateral gets less, and eventually the goal for it is to be 100% backed by just Frax shares and to be purely algorithmic. And as the system either expands or retracts, that's when either Frax is minted or burned. So I think it's a super novel system. I'm really excited about it. I think Frax and stablecoins is the real promise of blockchain because, like I said, Bitcoin's digital gold, but people don't really transact in gold. People need to transact in something that they can rely on, that they know is going to be worth the same thing today as it is tomorrow, as in the next day. So,
yeah, I mean, that's why obviously that's why fiat has worked so well. Well, I say it's worked so well. I mean, there's obviously a lot of flaws within the fiat, but that's why it hasn't had problems until obviously, I'd say like the 1970s is when things started going downhill, obviously, because the problem was they were making too much fiat, and they still are, with no backing at all. Now, so my understanding, so you would essentially start taking and how are you backing Frax in the initial phases? Was it with Tether?
Yeah, with Tether,
Okay.
And other stablecoins.
Okay, so initial stages, you're backing it with a couple other stablecoins like Tether and obviously whatever else you guys have in mind. And so as you reach a certain adoption or market cap growth with Frax, so I saw that one of the examples was like 20 million in Frax market cap, then you would start to transition down to a fractional stage where you don't have to necessarily back it 1-to-1 anymore. You bring it down to a fraction of the 1-to-1 ratio because there's more adopters or more holders of Frax.
Yeah.
And then you just keep going down until you finally get to an algorithmically backed stage where it's almost entirely like Frax shares. So are these Frax shares different?
So the Frax shares are different than Frax. Frax shares.
Okay.
Yeah. I like to think of Frax as like a kind of like a decentralized central bank, and like your Frax shares are kind of like your share in the bank itself.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So the share is kind of like the market cap of the share is kind of like as that increases, then I kind of view it as like more trust in the system as the market cap of Frax shares increase, and as that happens, the collateral of the stablecoin can go down, but like ever so gently and carefully.
So for initial holders, right? So for initial holders, obviously, the benefit of you being an initial holder, an early holder, is that you get these frac shares.
Yeah.
And then, so as soon as you reach a certain market cap, then you're going to hold off on the frac shares. Now, as soon as you get to algorithmically backed fracs stage, so you're saying that you're going to start burning fracs or frac shares?
We're going to start, it depends on where the system goes. So, if there's too much, fracs in the system, if let's say the value of fracs is over $1, then, we need to burn fracs. So people like buy frac shares and then we burn the fracs. But if the fracs is worth less than $1, then we have to, mint more. So it's the opposite. So we have to like take fracs.
Right. Essentially just try to get it to $1.
Yeah. It's try to keep it at equilibrium.
Right. Does that happen automatically, or is that something that's more manual?
That's something, that's going to be programmed into the smart contract.
Smart contract. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That makes sense. So it kind of reminds me, not entirely, it's not insane, but it kind of reminds me of like you have, VeChain, and then you have like VeChain Thor. Like, so if you stake your VeChain, then you can acquire more VeChain Thor. And this is kind of like the VeChain token itself is the token that's actually utilized in the supply chains. And then the VeChain Thor is kind of like, is like the value in the VeChain blockchain. So it's somewhat similar, but I guess anybody who knows about VeChain could like use a similar scenario for that.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with VeChain.
Oh, I mean, I love VeChain. It's like it's pretty popular, I guess. It's probably one of the most utilized supply chains inside Ethereum.
Cool.
All right, so we went through fracs. We explained that. That's I think that's a good explanation there. So let's talk about. Well, now we can talk about more about like the centralization and Wikipedia in particular. So as of right now, and I've seen like some articles and some content about like the current Wikipedia and how and you were saying earlier like getting edits done on Wikipedia is quite difficult. But from my understanding, the current centralized Wikipedia only has a select number of moderators, and they're very biased. And so if I said, hey, this is information here that Wikipedia is proposing is false, and I want to go make an edit, there's a chance that information is not even going to make it, it's not even going to be corrected because this information is biased. And so in a world where we're trying to remove the reins of censorship, Everipedia comes in and offers a solution with these IQ tokens like we spoke about earlier. So how do you see Everipedia kind of evolving in the future? Do you see, how do you see people using it? What do you think is like, the best way to get it to be used? Do you have ideas about like how to increase adoption, for example?
Yeah, so I have a few things that have been on my mind. So, I've been a part of Everipedia for 4 years. I've seen it all. And I think the best way to use Everipedia, is by an individual basis. So like everybody has like their own interests, whether it's an artist or if they live in a community, every community has like their own like local celebrities or local notable people. If you're trying to make your way, into your career, into a job, if you want to network, I consider Everipedia to be the greatest networking tool that people don't use. So for example, let's say you're applying for this job and there's this VP at the company that you're interested in and you look up to. You can make the Everipedia page for the VP. I've done this before. I made the Everipedia page for people, get to know them, and then I send it to them. I'm like, hey, like how are you doing? Like I think what you do is cool. Like here's the Everipedia page I made for you, and then I would know about their life, so I would just like ask like them certain stuff, and it's a great way to like meet people and introduce yourself, because first of all they're flattered that they have this page about them, and second of all, you have a basis to have a conversation with them with. So that's one way I see Everipedia being used, just for students and whatnot. And like I said, like just,
well, yeah, you obviously can't do that on Wikipedia. So.
No, you can't. When I was making Everipedia pages a lot, I considered myself like covering topics that weren't considered scholarly at the moment, but will be considered, notable and scholarly in the future. So an example would be, look at jazz music. In the 20s and 30s, jazz music was basically the hip hop of its day. It wasn't like considered scholarly at all. And same thing with in like the 70s with hip hop. It wasn't considered like scholarly at all. But now, today, you have college classes specifically on jazz, and hip hop is definitely getting there.
Right.
And so you kind of, it's funny just how different times view different art. Like, and so I kind of view what I was doing at Everipedia, covering these like brand new hot topics, that weren't considered, that were considered like pop culture fads by people, but they're actually like going to have historic value in the future.
What are the most popular topics that that you guys see on Everipedia? What's the most, I guess, viewed or most, I don't know, I guess you say most edited?
Most edited, yeah. So, we've been recently doing a huge like crypto push. Just because we're in the industry, we see that niche as being like something that we can definitely cover and be the best at. So we've seen a lot of our crypto pages blow up, whether it's for people in the space, projects in the space. They've been getting a lot of great feedback, especially in the way we do outreach with our newsletter, which I encourage everyone to sign up for. Outside of cryptocurrency, like I said, YouTubers, TikTok stars, Instagram influencers, just people with kind of like social clout or however you call it. They're usually our most popular pages.
Okay, awesome. And actually, now you brought up TikTok. I want to talk about that because, so what's going on right now is, I think Mike Pompeo, what is he, the Secretary of Defense? I think something like that.
Yeah.
He's saying,
he's the Secretary of State or Defense.
One of the two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently he's saying that, and I mean, this is logical. I think most people came to this conclusion, or at least most people in crypto would have known this, that TikTok is essentially harvesting data, from the users. And so, that's, like I said, you could have just guessed that because TikTok is obviously based in China. This would be a perfect way of just grabbing all this, predictive data, and trends and preferences and all these things. I mean, there's so much data to harvest on TikTok.
Yeah.
So what do you think about all that?
TikTok. It's funny. I knew about TikTok before it was even TikTok. It used to be called ByteDance, and then some company.
Really?
Yeah, it used to be ByteDance, and then I think some Chinese company bought it and then spun it into TikTok.
Huh.
And it was similar. Like ByteDance was like people lip syncing and stuff, and that's what TikTok kind of was before. And then when I was editing a lot, one of the most popular pages I made was there was this one of the first like TikTok songs to blow up was called Hit or Miss.
Yeah.
Did you remember that?
Yeah,
that
I remember
came from
that.
TikTok. Yeah. So I made the pages for like the song and like the artist behind it, and like I knew about TikTok, but the thing was with how personally for me, I did not want another app to like go down a rabbit hole of. And I didn't honestly, I'm not sure, I don't use TikTok. My friends do. I have like nothing against people that use TikTok or anything. I just don't want to like go down another rabbit hole. And I'm not sure how like, so, I like how on Instagram and Twitter, I can like go into people's DMs and, connect with people, talk with, I mean, that's how I got connected with you.
Right. Very true. Very true.
Through Twitter. With TikTok, yeah, it's I guess it's cool. It blew up and like everyone's talking about it. You have like a whole new like class of TikTok stars, and like I see their drama on Twitter now. I'm like, who are these people? Am I getting old?
Yeah.
But I definitely the data collection makes me uncomfortable. That's like not that's part of the reason why I don't use it. Along with like I don't want another app to like go down a rabbit hole of like
right.
I go down enough rabbit holes on Twitter. and whatnot.
Speaking of rabbit holes, so this is a topic that I'm sure people would like to maybe know more about, and we won't go like too much in depth on this, but I know you've seen the news about Ghislaine Maxwell.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. So and then all the stuff that's going around with this, apparently. She's going to be naming names. So we'll see if she actually gets a chance to do that. And she's also going to the same prison where Epstein was suicided, So what do you think about all that?
I think it's just so interesting that these conspiracy theories and like that were kind of like big and like that were fringe 10 years ago when like I was like online and just like I remember first hearing about Jeffrey Epstein in like 2008, 2009 when I was in high school and like all like the creepy shit he was doing and
Yeah.
whatnot. And like it was pretty obvious that like he was like the person that he is now today, but no one cared because it wasn't big news and he was protected.
Right.
And now it's like a mainstream thing to say, a meme to say Jeff Epstein didn't kill himself. I think it's just unreal how much like the Overton window has shifted to like how like quote unquote conspiracy theories, even though the valid questions are now part of the mainstream discourse. When I think about Ghislaine Maxwell and like the whole thing, like this is how I view it. Like when it comes to anything that's content, and I'm talking about like whether it's drugs or guns or anything.
Yeah.
It takes a massive network to move that shit around. It takes a massive network to move like drugs from Colombia through Mexico it takes a lot of different moving pieces. Like these drug cartels are Fortune 500 companies. So
right.
What doesn't say the same thing happens with people? And so when you look into Jeffrey Epstein more, everywhere he went, every city he went to, he had girls on deck. Which is terrible. It's in Paris, like girls on deck, like
right.
New York, and like in the Virgin Islands, he had like, there were people with witness accounts saying like, like on the island they saw like young girls like being boated there. So, I mean, I know Jeffrey Epstein's dead, but I think Ghislaine Maxwell is like possibly the next best thing, if not even better than Jeffrey Epstein because of everything she knows and whatnot. So it's going to be really interesting to hear who she names because, Jeffrey Epstein did not do it alone. He was definitely just like a piece of the puzzle.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
like I said, like it takes a massive network to transport content and property. And as terrible as I had to say it, this is like modern day slavery. Like
and I think the sillier thing, I've had a lot of my friends kind of wake up, right? Like before, like Epstein, they would tell me like, no, there's no way that this stuff exists, right? There's no way that this trafficking is more than just like drugs, for example. But then after like Epstein's suicide, then they're just like, wait a minute. Like they started to learn more about it and they started to like kind of figure out there's no way this guy killed himself, right? It's absolutely no way. And then they had to kind of like expand their idea of what all this stuff was. And now it's to the point where, like you said, it's not even a conspiracy anymore. It's all mainstream because you literally cannot avoid, connecting the dots between, okay, well, let's take a look at Epstein, right? Well, we know that he was, a trafficker of humans. Well, he didn't just traffic, the women that he was, bringing to these celebrities. Like, where did they come from, right? And how big was it? And if you look at Epstein's, if you look at Epstein's black book, I mean, like he's got hundreds of names there or whatever. I mean,
and not like the thing is like he was just someone in high society. So I'm not going to say like everyone that took a picture with Epstein,
right,
was a part of it. And I think that's where like people, kind of have their selective biases.
Yeah.
It's funny, like people on the right and left are like, oh, look, Trump is with Epstein. Yeah. Oh, look, Clinton was with Epstein.
Yeah.
Oh, look, Elon Musk is with
right. And both sides are ignoring, each side's, pictures,
Like, you kind of like, since they were involved with so many high profile people, and so many people have met with them, like it's you can't just say that everybody that met with Epstein is like part of this, but
right.
It's the ones that were repeatedly with Epstein that it's suspicious.
Right. So if you're visiting the island multiple times, there's probably something.
If you're on his plane 26 times, like coordinating that, then there just might be something up.
There might be, right. Right. I mean, how many times does it take before it's coincidence?
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm hoping they keep her alive and safe. Like, they really can't mess up this time because literally everyone's eyes are on them.
Look, you say that now.
I mean, knock on wood. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We're only halfway through 2020, so it's been a crazy. It's funny. I feel like every year after 2020 is just gonna be boring because of like how much like
None of them can
exciting.
compete with 2020.
Yeah, well, how exciting, both positively and negatively exciting stuff has happened this year. Just like it's just nonstop, like just
Yeah.
like something every month.
Well, I guess the good news is, if there's anything that's that doesn't come close to 2020, at least we won't be that depressed.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I want to go ahead and just close this out. I want to let you have a chance to highlight anything that that you guys want to highlight for Everipedia, or anything that you're working on in particular, and just give you the opportunity to highlight some social media links and all that kind of stuff for you.
I encourage everyone, sign up for Everipedia, sign up for PredIQt. We're releasing social tools, so it's like super easy to sign up to, your email, Twitter, social logins and whatnot. You can, if you want to join our community, the best way is through our Telegram group. So that's @Everipedia. You can follow us on Twitter @Everipedia, Instagram @EveriPediaOfficial. If you want to, follow me and whatever I have to say about what's going on in the world, my Twitter is @DaveSaidThat. If you want to look at my funny memes on my Instagram story, and I'm actually traveling the country right now. I moved out of LA a week and a half ago, just to since I can remote work. I'm just driving the country, and hopefully the world, once all this stuff is once things die down a bit. But if you want to keep up with my adventures, my Instagram is @DaveDoingThings_. Yeah, so definitely, I encourage everyone to try our products. The future is here. It's just a matter, are you aware of it or not? And I encourage everyone. Like I said, we welcome you into our community. We're inclusive. We're all about that.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to put all of your social media links on the video version of this podcast. So we'll have that underneath your name and everything.
Cool.
So awesome. So yeah, if you guys have any opportunities, if you want to check out Everipedia, go to Everipedia.com. I'll have that on the or in the podcast description, as well as the YouTube description. So definitely check that out. We'll have all the links for the social media as well. And so thank you again, David, for coming on and talking with me today. It has been fun, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on, Ty.
Thank you very much. All right. Peace.